Oops. Thank you, everyone, and please welcome Zoe from Phala. Thank you. Yeah, the mic was on already while I was behind the screen here. Cool. Hello, everyone, and welcome back after your short coffee break. Yeah, we are going to talk about Phala World today, or I specifically, but everyone in the room who wants to engage in the conversation as well. I am Zoe. I lead European growth and BizDev for Phala Network. And Phala Network actually provides a decentralized computation cloud. And we are parachain on Kusama and also have our parachain slot secured on the Polka Dot chain. Today, however, I want to talk about Phala World, which is one of the biggest use cases that we are building on our decentralized cloud today. And who of you guys knows this movie? Oh, not too many. Okay. Not too many science fiction lovers here in the room. Okay, this is The Ender's Game, a very, very cool science fiction movie. And if you have not watched it, I encourage you to have a look because it's a very, very cool science fiction movie. But it has actually a very deep story behind it. And for everyone that has not watched the movie, it's actually about a group of kids that get trained to go to space and actually fight against aliens and like other creatures to protect Mother Earth. But the interesting thing is how this happens is that these kids are trained in a game. So they are going to play games to become a soldier, to learn how to fight and how to protect everyone. And obviously for kids, they love to play games, right? So it's very easy for them to get excited about a game, to get addicted to it even, and to forget everything around them and to only focus on this one goal to actually win the war. There's more behind it because it's not only getting trained, it's also being in this specific culture as a kid and really getting trained to focus on one goal and being not distracted by other things in the world actually really motivates you and brings the best potential, like your best skills from every user or every participant in this program. And this is Andrew. Actually, he became the leader of this program. And the special thing about him is that he was more an introvert actually in the beginning, but he started to become a leader because he was very, very good at the game that he was playing. And he actually leveled up, he increased his skill set, he grew his character, and then in the end actually became the leader of the group, of the kids group, and also was winning the war with his team. And this movie actually inspired us at Phala Network to create Phala World. So what we do at Phala World, we actually create a game experience for you as a user to contribute to our network, Phala Network, or any other blockchain in the future. So we thought, okay, if we can inspire people with the game, and everyone loves to play games or have everything a bit more fun and engaging, we can do the same for our contribution to the network. And very important for us is that we not only create this game experience, we also create a unique culture. We want people to really get engaged into the network, to celebrate Phala Network, and Phala World specifically, to get motivated and actually grow their own character on the network. So by now we have already users, of course, in the network, but we give the opportunity for everyone to create their own avatar and their digital representation of their skill set and the different attributes that they actually provide to the network. Yeah, taking a step back, also looking on the user experience, right? Not only creating games and putting everything more in a gamified experience, we also look at the user experience and the user interface. And I think a lot of you guys are familiar with this evolution table here, from BTC clients to Metamask and then to smart wallets. But we are now in a time where we are building metaverses and new game experiences. And we don't only have to create these things on an infrastructure level, but we also have to see how does the experience change for the user? And what can we actually do to increase this experience to make people really use what we are building and not going back to just like a 2D or like a very pixeled game and like other people building metaverses at the moment. So we at Phala also took it as an experience or as a challenge to create very high level and advanced designs and visuals for Phala World. Okay, Phala World, what is Phala World actually, to put it simply together? Phala World is actually a digital representation of your progression as well as contribution to the Phala network. So as I explained, we have users, we are all living in a digital world already, right? So we use on-chain activities, we contribute to a network, and we also live in a digital world where we tweet, where we use Discord, where we use GitHub and everything actually online. And we at Phala World, at Phala Network said, okay, the contribution to the network should be, first of all, gamified, but it also should represent you as a character online. So your digital representation, where you can actually create your own avatar. So what we do in Phala World, we actually collect your on-chain activity, so your contribution to the network, if you vote, if you contribute in or actively engaged in the governance, if you are running a worker node. So Phala Network provides a decentralized computation cloud. So the most important value of our network is the compute power, right? So everyone that runs a worker node is also contributing to the network. If you're delegating, if you own a lot of FAT token, actually put them to the worker. But also, again, if you tweet about Phala Network, if you contribute to our GitHub, if you engage in our Discord community, this is all information that builds your own character in Phala World. And we collect this information, and based on this information, we create your character that you then actually can play or extend in Phala World with. So important to understand is that we have two phases in Phala World. We have launched the first phase of Phala World, and there it's all about like your personal growth, what I just explained, right? Collecting this information. Based on this information, we create attributes. So you have an intelligence, a strength, different willpower, and it's all about your personal growth, actually. So you want to grow your own character. In phase 2, we are envisioned to create our own game. So we are not there yet, and honestly, we don't know yet what type of game it will be, what is the best time, RPG or strategy game. However, it will be a real game. And then it will be also implemented in the fitting metaverse. And in phase 2, it's also more about the collaboration. So you want to interact with your team members, you want to interact with other actors actually in Phala World. Yeah, to get more creative, we have rewritten a whole story, and actually Marvin, our co-founder, is a big science fiction fan. If you guys know him, you definitely know that he loves to write, and got very inspired to write also here about Phala World. However, it's definitely a community contribution, Phala World, the whole story about it. Don't want to go into depth into this, you can read everything up. But yeah, just giving you the idea that we really rewrote the whole Web3 movement. What does it mean to build in Web3? What is our white paper about in Phala Network? And everything that we have created so far, we wanted to rewrite and yeah, put into a new story. So we don't know yet what type of game it will be, but we know the mechanism that we want to bring into the game. And most of you might have heard about play to earn or play and earn, but how many of you have heard about play to build? Okay, yeah, the Phala community knows about it. Cool. No worries. I mean, we just came up with this actually, play to build, or not came up, but this is a new concept that we want to implement. And the difference here is actually that it's not only that you're playing and earning, or you play while you earn while you play, or however you want to put it. It's actually you play and you build. So you play, and while you're playing, you contribute to the network. Again, our vision is to actually engage the community. The community is already using our blockchain, is already using our social medias, but how can we make them motivated to actually contribute and continuously contribute and actually use the network? So play to build is the mechanism that is being implemented in our game. And yeah, in the game itself, it will also be then more visualized how you actually can play and build, expand actually the network itself. These are just some visuals. This is not our graphics right now. These are just some, DeFi Kingdom pictures here. But just so you get an overview of how this actually looks, what I'm talking about. If you want to do a crypto trade, right, or you want to manage some of your assets, you actually go into an interface and you can have like a face-to-face swap or transfer your assets directly to the person you want to transfer to. Governance. We all use Polka Assembly at the moment, or Subsquare, or whatever governance tool you're using. It's very boring, right? I mean, it's not a nice user interface and user experience. We can imagine something like this. So you come together, the council, you go into the game, you open your map, you say, okay, I want to participate in the governance. You take a seat at the council or in the community, and then you actually vote and discuss on the proposals that are on-chain. Or, for example, delegating or running a worker node. I just explained the biggest value in our network, right, to actually provide the cloud is that we have worker nodes. And we have a lot of people that run these nodes. We have a lot of token holders that want to put their tokens to work. And they would just walk around then. We have our Phala app here in the background that is currently being used. But again, in the game, you would just walk around and find like a worker miner. You can put your tokens on there and actually experience everything in a much more fun way. What would a game without a cool NFT system, right? This is actually a part I'm very excited about. Not only because we implement a very, very new concept, but also because we partner with one of our, we partner with a partner from the ecosystem, with the Remark team, actually. Any one of you guys heard about soulbound NFTs? Okay, now I get the interaction, that's good. So we are actually the first use case, I know for sure in the Polka Dot ecosystem, I don't know outside of it, I ask around, but I haven't heard too many people actually implementing it, that uses the soulbound concept. And not only the soulbound concept that Vitalik talked about early this year, we are actually implementing soulbound 2.0. And this is based because we're using the NFT 2.0 palette and concept from Remark. So we are working closely with Bruno and his amazing team to implement soulbound 2.0, which means that we have an NFT concept where you have your own NFT that is not transferable. And again, this non-transferable NFT is based on your progression and your community contribution to the network, and that's why it's always tied to your identity and it's not transferable. We call it the Spirit NFT, and that's actually how it looks like. The Spirit NFT is currently free to claim. Everyone in the network can claim the Spirit NFT, again, for free. The Shell NFT then afterwards needs to be purchased actually with some Phala token. For everyone that's more interested about the comparison, soulbound token 1 and 2.0, they have similarities, right? As it says here, they're both non-transferable, and they're always tied to your personal reputation. So it's always about what are you doing, what are you contributing. It's always about your specific individual reputation. However, there are big differences, and that's why we needed to choose soulbound 2.0, the concept that we are developing together with the Remark team, is that it's composable. So you actually have your non-transferable NFT, and you have NFTs that are transferable. So you will see this in a visualized way in a bit, but also that we have the multi-data, right? I explained before, we connect on-chain, off-chain data, several of your contacts, several of your wallets, everything together. In soulbound 1, it would be only metadata. So it's not evolvable, it's not changeable, and you cannot connect several of your wallets or accounts, actually. And again, also the upgradability. We, in Phala World, want to motivate the people to contribute, to interact, to grow, right? You don't want to, we just heard an amazing speech about leadership. Everyone wants to grow in their team, they want to grow in the community. So if the NFT is not able to to be upgradable, what do you want to do with it, right? In several years, you want to contribute to it. You want to show your skills, your power, and with this, you need an upgradable NFT system. I talked a little bit about attributes as well. This is just an overview. So I mentioned if you have a lot of FAR token that you stake, if you contribute a lot to our GitHub repo, if you interact on-chain governance, these actions all flow into the attributes. And this is how we actually create your avatar and the strength and the different careers that we will talk about in a bit in Phala world. And now we have a cool video, and I hope this works. We practiced this a little bit in the break. Yeah, cool. So this is now actually a demo. This is what's available today already, how to claim your Spirit NFT. So here you see the interface of LitonTree, another partner that we work with, to actually integrate MCP. It's called My Crypto Profile, where you connect all your different accounts, as you just saw, Polka.js, Phala account, Discord, and so on. This was a bit quick, but when you then upload it, you actually see on the right side here your personal attributes, and the strength, intelligence, and willpower will increase based on what accounts you have actually connected to this Spirit NFT. Correct. Dexterity and the strength were now increased, and this is also shows that you can, again, always contribute further, right? If you don't have too much intelligence, means that you maybe don't run a worker node in our network. If you want to become stronger in the game, you want to maybe think about to set up a worker node or contribute more to the GitHub and so on. So there's always room for improvement. Yeah, just a short overview again, how this actually looks in the interface. And based on these attributes that you just saw that actually evolve, you can then afterwards choose a career. And these careers are pretty cool because it's based on these attributes that say, yeah, you have a lot of intelligence or willpower, you will maybe be a hardware druid or something like this. So the algorithm in the back actually provides you the best fitting career. Doesn't mean that you have to choose this career because, again, you can grow, right? And you can say, no, maybe I take a lower career to then have more possibility to grow and add to my skill set in future. And now we have another video that actually shows the different species. And what's special about this is actually that you see these beautiful designs, right? So we put a lot of work and a lot of love into designing these species. And again, as I said in the intro of my talk, it's not only about the experience and the game experience, it's also about what you're seeing, right? What you're buying here as an NFT, and how cool this actually looks to own and then to increase based on your skill set. And I think we have one more video. Yeah, this is now actually the process, how, and this is all live, so you can go on Phala.world and experience all of this. This is now how you would actually choose one of your species. So we have 4 different species, 5 different careers that you can choose from. And then you actually choose different attributes. You can choose the different size. As you see, all the species, the NFT always changes and adjusts. And we also have, I think, 3 different rarities of all of these 4 different species. Yeah, so again, the Spirit NFT is free to claim. This is connected to your attributes. The Shell NFT is what you see here. This is launching soon, and we are building the marketplace for it right now. And these Spirit NFTs are then need to be purchased with your FAR token. Cool. Now we have seen everything from the nice interface and how it looks from the front end. Just to give you an overview how it looks in the back end, actually. We do have the on-chain and the off-chain activities that we explained before. Therefore, we use LitonTree as an integration. They do everything via their MCP. Important to notice is here that we actually completely customize their MCP product for Phala World. And there are many more integrations to come. If you try out Phala.world, and then actually go through this whole process to claim your Spirit NFT. You see what kind of accounts are currently able to connect. And again, we are evolving and want to even integrate many more accounts to this. So these identities then connect into your Spirit NFT. It's a soulbound token, as explained before. Then you're able to claim your shell NFT, which is not a soulbound token, so it's transferable and tradable. And we are building the marketplace for it right now. And then you have the seal NFT, which actually is a soulbound token on top of the Spirit and the shell NFT. So this is our soulbound token 2.0 infrastructure. And then we have on the lower side here our Web3 minigame in the metaverse, which means that we actually put this infrastructure, as I said in the beginning as well, into a fitting metaverse. So Phala World is not a metaverse, but we are building the infrastructure to be actually put for a minigame to be put into a metaverse. So some of you guys also might have heard about CypherMod already. And this is actually what we revealed, I think at Blockdown this year at the conference. And this is actually the infrastructure that Phala World is hosted on. So I told you Phala World, Phala Network and Remark, we are working closely together to build a soulbound 2.0 system. We have integrated successfully in Phala World. And by working together, we actually realized, hey, we can make a whole SDK out of this. And we can actually help people to spin up these kind of mini games that we are building for Phala World to build this for their own world. Marvin and Bruno then came up with the idea to call this the SDK, the CypherMod SDK, and we call it now actually the substrate for metaverses. So if you want to learn more about this project as well, happy to talk about it afterwards. And as you can see here, our vision is actually to build these type of mini games and game experiences for any chain or any ecosystem they are interested in. Phala World, we can imagine a Polka Dot, Kusama world, right? But even a Solana world, if you want. And like even for brands, right? Maybe brands that are not in the Web3 space yet, but they want to have a more gamified and nice experience for their users. Hoon said we should not talk about roadmaps, and I know this is always a critical topic, but I want to give you guys a bit more an overview where we are, what we have done, and where we are actually going. Timelines are always a bit critical. However, we are currently here in the NFT launch in June, July 2020. Spirit NFT, as I said, is ready to claim. The next step is that we are launching our marketplace, and then the shell NFT is able to, you're able to actually purchase your shell NFT. The next steps are that we launch CypherMod in the beta version, and then have this play blockchain like a game, right? This play to build mechanism actually integrated, and then our first Phala World experience should be launched. Again, we started the first phase, but Phala World as a game is still in development. So if you're interested to come and save the broken world together, I'm happy to take one question or two, and otherwise you can speak outside. Happy to connect. Thank you. Yeah, there's one question I see.
Sorry, Zoe. It just for
good.
one question because we are a little late, so just one.
Just one, yeah.
So thank you very much for this presentation. So I understand you want to gamify your users' actions to participate in your main product, that is the network. Mm-hmm. How do you justify spending so much to develop an entire game and ecosystem around it? And is it already worth it? Do you have any metrics?
So Yeah, I mean, it is, as I explained in the beginning also, it is one of the use case to actually prove our tech, right? So Phala Network, our main protocol, is a decentralized computation cloud. We have over 100,000 virtual CPU up and running. And what is better to use the CPU for than for hosting games and like high throughput and scalability use cases, right? So besides getting use cases on our platform, we are also building our own use case actually. First of all, because we want to show how to do it in a right way, let's put it like this, right? And in a very engaging game, because this whole concept like Phala World, Play to Build, NFT 2.0, Sobocan 2.0, these are all new concepts, right? And new things that are out there. And we feel like the responsibility or the inspiration to put it together into Phala World. And then with this, inspire other people. It's, as I said in the beginning, we are also not there yet to develop the whole game. But CypherMod is a part project of it, and therefore this is actually a new project that we're focusing on to then also develop the game further.
Thank you.
Okay, now I'm done. But taking more questions outside. Thank you.
For our next speaker, please welcome, once he's set up, Alberto from Moonbeam.
Hello. Well, thank you everyone for joining my presentation. Let's see if the slides pop up. There you go. Cool. All right. Yeah, thank you for everyone for being here. It's actually a great venue. I'm super happy to be here. My name was introduced as Alberto from Moonbeam. I do developer relations, and today I'm going to talk to you about Moonbeam in an interoperable future, right? And so in the structure of the talk, we're going to start with Polka Dot. You know, this is ParisDOT. People should be familiar with Polka Dot, but why not? It will only take a minute, right? The next part that we're going to talk about is about Moonbeam, very briefly. What is it? What makes Moonbeam special? And last but not least, we're going to focus a bunch of the presentation into interoperability. What Moonbeam offers and what makes interoperability important in the future of blockchain. So I really like this meme at the right-hand side, because it explains in a very simple image what Moonbeam does, right? One of the main ideas of Moonbeam is to bring Ethereum developers closer to Polka Dot. But what is Polka Dot, right? And I only will use 1 minute of the presentation to explain Polka Dot, but it's important to set the precedent of interoperability. And so Polka Dot, the main idea is that there are many best blockchains. There's no one blockchain to rule them all, right? It's not like the Lord of the Rings ring. And so Polka Dot provides two main things, right? It provides, connects different blockchains in an ecosystem and secures them. So any blockchain that is part of Polka Dot has these two benefits, okay? And the blockchains that connect to Polka Dot are called parachains, and they provide they're specialized blockchains that provide specific functionalities to the ecosystem. So I don't know if you guys know, but in Polka Dot, you cannot really develop. You cannot, as an app developer, you cannot really build on top of Polka Dot, right? You can only stake and do governance. And so that is why Polka Dot has these specialized parachains or blockchains, because each parachain will provide a specific function to the ecosystem. And last but not least, XCM is basically the technology that allows all these participants in the ecosystem to basically interact with each other. So I'd really like to say two things about Polka Dot, is that in Polka Dot, the parachains are nothing without Polka Dot, or the relay chain, that's how it's called. But the relay chain is nothing with the parachains, right? Because if one doesn't have the other, there's a missing piece in the ecosystem. But the other important thing about Polka Dot is that it has to live to the promise of interoperability, right? If Polka Dot is not an interoperable ecosystem, Polka Dot doesn't really offer anything special out of just shared security, right? And that is why we're going to focus quite a bit of the presentation today in interoperability. So the question is now, what is Moonbeam? It's going to be also very brief, but as you might know already, Moonbeam is an Ethereum-compatible smart contract platform in Polka Dot, right? So our main thing that we offer the ecosystem is to be a smart contract platform where we're fully focused on providing the most Ethereum-compatible parachain in the ecosystem. And so, as with any basically EVM-compatible parachain, we part from the bottom layer, which is the EVM, and we have like added layers of functionalities on top of the regular EVM implementation. The first one is that we're built with Substrate, which is this framework to build blockchains, not necessarily for Polka Dot, but it's the easiest way to connect to Polka Dot. And if we connect to Polka Dot, we have interoperability as a given, right? The next thing is that we have a fully compatible Web3 RPC. If you're a developer, you might know what this means, but if you're a user, you actually have used this feature without not even knowing. If you've ever used Moonbeam in the dApp, for example, you interact with it through Metamask, right? And Metamask communicates through this Web3 RPC. So that's why in Moonbeam you can do all the interactions that you do with Metamask. The next feature is unified accounts, and that is only specific to Moonbeam, I think. And it's that all the interactions that you do in Moonbeam is with an Ethereum-style account. You will never use Polka.js extension for now. So let's see in the future it supports Ethereum-style accounts. But you never use a Polka.js extension. You will always use Ethereum-based wallets such as Metamask, Ledger, Trezor, Math Wallet, and then other wallets in the ecosystem. And last but not least, Moonbeam is really focused on providing an Ethereum dev-like environment, like I've mentioned before, with expanded features. And I'm going to touch base on these expanded features in a bit. And we were trying to aim to be an interoperability hub, not only within the Polkadot ecosystem, but to communicate Polkadot and Kusama to other chains like Cosmos, Avalanche, Polygon, whatever. So I really like this phrase about Moonbeam composability because we're trying to bootstrap now an interoperable ecosystem. It's not only a regular ecosystem like Ethereum has, right? You have lending protocols, you have DEXs, you have stable coins, you have stable swaps or stable DEXs, derivatives. This all has, Ethereum has this. And for me personally, it's one of the things that I love most about Ethereum. It's just that all these projects can actually interact with each other atomically in a single transaction by just coding some stuff without needing requirements or like authorizations. It's all decentralized and it's all in the blockchain. So one of the things that we actually noticed is that in order to bring sort of like Moonbeam into the same stage, the first part was that we needed to have a tooling, right? So developers wanted tools that they're already familiar with, and because we want to be the most Ethereum-compatible parachain, we needed to bring these tools to Moonbeam. So for example, that's why in Moonbeam or Moonriver, you find the Graph, Covalent, you have Chainlink, you have MetaMask, Trezor, Ledger, you have Etherscan, some Ethereum development environments like Truffle, Hardhat, Ether.js. And then you also have in the bottom layer here what I like to call bridges, right? I mean, for Polkadot, bridges is not a really great word because it's native interoperability, but you have these sort of like interoperability protocols. I think that's a better name. So Moonbeam can actually benefit from Polkadot to communicate within the ecosystem. So with parachains like Phala, Kala, or Karua, Akala, depending on Kusama or Polkadot. But we also leverage, and we're actually quite focused right now on leveraging message passing protocols such as Axelar or Nomad to actually communicate with blockchains outside of the ecosystem. And so that's why I like to say that in Moonbeam you will find interoperable composability that will leverage both XCM and then GMP, which is general message passing protocols. All right, I mentioned EVM with expanded features, and I'm bringing this up because later on when we talk about interoperability, we're going to talk about how we make interoperability sort of Ethereum friendly, okay? So we like to say that we have an EVM with expanded features because you guys, without not even knowing, if you're users of the Moonbeam platform, you're doing interactions that are actually part of Substrate. So they're not part of like a smart contract on Ethereum or in the EVM. They're actually baked in functions in Substrate that in regular blockchains, you will interact with it through Polka.js apps or the extension. So for example, the staking pre-compile is what allowed you as a user of Moonbeam or Moonriver to stake in the Moonbeam dApp using MetaMask, Ledger, and all these wallets that I've mentioned probably too many times by now. We also have a Democracy Pre-Compile, which if you ever used Polka Assembly before, Polka Assembly has a very unique feature for Moonbeam-based networks in which you can actually vote in the network in Polka Assembly using MetaMask, right? So it's not only a forum-based platform, you can actually vote in it using MetaMask and these other wallets that I won't name again. We also have an Erc20 Pre-Compile, and the idea of this is that Glimmer, so the token of Moonbeam, for example, can exist as a native token, but can also exist as an ERC20. So you can see here that I'm going to add Glimmer as an ERC20, and I can actually send it as it was an ERC20 to any other participant in the network. And this is really cool because if you're at DEX, you don't need to have to wrap it, unwrap it, and so you're actually saving gas in the process. And last but not least, we have, if any of you guys participated in the Moonbeam River crowd loans, oh, sorry, no, the batch pre-compile. I went a little bit ahead of myself. This is one of the newest pre-compiles, and it's the one that I'm really excited about because it allows you to batch Ethereum calls, right? So you guys probably, if you interacted with the DEX before, it's a two-step action. You have to approve first, and then you have to confirm the swap, right? With a batch pre-compile, the developers can actually batch these two Ethereum transactions or EVM transactions into one. And you can actually do this for 10, 20, as much as the gas allows you to do it. And last but not least, like I mentioned before, if you've ever participated in the Moonriver and Moonbeam crowd loans, you go ahead into the Moonbeam dApp, and then you claim your rewards using this little nice button that you see here. And it starts, once again, an Ethereum-like experience with MetaMask and all these other wallets. And that's thanks to the crowd loan pre-compile. And we have others that I'm not going to mention. But if you have any questions about any of these, if you're a developer and you're interested, you can go by the booth and ask specific questions about them. So we reach interoperability. I promised that we were going to spend some time in this. So interoperability in Polka Dot, you have to talk about XCM. So XCM, there are many ways to think about XCM because you can think of it as a developer, which is going to be a little bit harder. You can think it as a regular user. And so I prefer to take the second approach. So XCM, it's a message with a given format and a set of instructions, right? So imagine in a regular email that you're sending to your boss or whatever, you're like, hi, Alice, how you doing, right? You have a specific format, and then you can say, hey, Alice, can you do this for me? Can you go back and grab this? And then you give a series of instructions, and then you say goodbye, right? I mean, if you're a developer, don't kill me, but it's like a way that I like to say that XCM is. It's a message format with a series of instructions, basically. And then you have the XE virtual machine, which is, once again, it's not technically true, but it's like the Ethereum virtual machine, the EVM, but specific for XCM instructions, right? So if the instruction is go over there and turn off the lights, that computer will understand that instruction and execute it, okay? And then you have the communication channels. And this is where I'm going to show a picture, and you're going to hopefully understand the picture later on, because that's why I want to explain the communication channels. So this is what connects the chain A with chain B. And it's unidirectional, right? So if we connect, for example, with Phala, that I'm using as an example because it was before me, Moonbeam has to connect to Phala, and then Phala has to connect to Moonbeam. That's how it works. That's why you always see two arrows here. And these channels allow message passing in that given direction. Any parachain that connected already to Polka Dot and Kusama has already a channel with the Polka Dot and Kusama. It doesn't have to open a new channel. And then last but not least, we have sort of like the type of channels that exist, right? So if Moonbeam wants to connect with Polka Dot, it's actually called UMP. It's like the transport, the way that message is transported. If Polka Dot wants to communicate with Moonbeam, it does DMP. And then between parachain is XCMP, or actually right now is HRMP. It's just fancy names, basically. All right, so Polka Dot and XCM instructions, and I've mentioned this before. So these are three instructions that I grab as an example. You know, they're not my favorite or anything, but you can find in this link all the list of instructions that XCM provides to developers. The important thing to understand is that a combination of these instructions is what's going to have a specific action in the XCM message, right? So if I tell another parachain, hey, I want you to walk 5 steps, go into the light switch, turn it off, and then come back, right? So these 3 instructions that I'm saying, probably 4, it's the parachain is going to execute them, understand them, and then do the action, okay? So it's a combination of XCM instructions what actually provides sort of like a specific action in the target parachain. So these three, for example, are one that are actually used to open a channel with another parachain. If I want to open a channel with a Phala, for example, I would send an XCM message with these three instructions, and in the transact, I would actually tell Polkadot, hey, Polkadot, I want to open a channel with a Phala. All right? But that's more or less how it works. And another important sort of topic that I want to bring is weight. Weight is a very, once again, deaf sort of like definition, but I'll try to make it simple, right? So the idea of weight is that when you execute an action, so let's say I want to transfer tokens to Alice, that is going to take some time to execute in the block, right? So there's an action that needs to be executed. And so that action is measured in seconds. And basically, if it took 0.0002 seconds, that it's like 20 billion whatever weights, okay? So that is a conversion. And so basically, for XEM, and this is not XEM specific, like I said, but for XEM, this also implies that there's some weights attached to it. And so the idea is that every single instruction has an amount of weight. So think weight, once again, as time that it gets to execute that action or that instruction. And then there's associated cost with that, right? So when we send an XEM to Polkadot, we have to understand that these three transactions, I didn't include the transact one because of space, but are going to cost me around 0.033 dots, right? And so the message has to understand that it has 0.033 dots in order to be executed, okay? One thing that you might notice here, and you might ask, is like, why is it so expensive, 1 billion weight in Polkadot, and why it's so cheap on Kusama? And that is because on Polkadot, they have not yet measured how much each instruction actually takes. What they do is they grab a computer that they have somewhere, or like a standard hardware, and they say, okay, in this computer, this instruction withdraw asset took this much time to execute. But in Polkadot, they just say, okay, we don't know yet, so I'm just going to put a very high number just to make sure that it's okay. That's how it works, okay? And then in Moonbeam, we've not yet benchmarked once again, and so that's why we have a little bit of a lower number, but it's still, it's a fixed number by instruction. Because you can see, for example, in Kusama that withdraw asset takes this much, and by execution takes like a fraction of that, but on Polkadot, it costs the same. And it's not really fair, right? So this is the picture that I wanted to show you with the channels. So you can see here that you have Kusama, and this is on 14th of July, because this is changing constantly, so it's really hard. You can see all these different dots that you see here are different parachains. Some of them are here. This is Kusama, and this is Polkadot. And all of these parachains are actually interconnected natively, trustlessly, in a decentralized way. And this picture actually, it's really cool if you think about it. Because it's not the same as using, whatever project to bridge Ethereum to Moonbeam or to Avax or whatever, right? This is natively given by Polkadot and Kusama. And this website, by the way, to give credit what credit is due, it was done by one of the team members of Phala. On the right-hand side, because XEM was actually much earlier, like it was released, not long ago. The XEM channels are not that much or that many, as you can see here on the left-hand side. But you can see that this is actually a number from Polkaholic, which is an XEM explorer, and I think it's correct. But you can see that the total, basically, volume that has been moved in Kusama in the last 7 days, it's roughly 100 million. And then in Polkadot, it's for 450 million, which is pretty crazy. All right, so now I want to talk about the different use cases that XEM brings, right? And the first one that everybody knows, because it's the most common one, is transferring tokens, right? So on Moonbeam, you can bring DOT as XE DOT. You can bring AUSD from a Phala as XE AUSD. So once again, at a very high level, this is very simplified. How does it work? In simple terms, basically what you do is that you through XEM, don't do this like balance transfer, oh, that's it, right? Through XEM, what you do is that you actually instruct Polkadot with this given XEM instruction, and this XEM instruction will transfer tokens from the account that you want to transfer it from to a special account that is owned by Moonbeam or by the parachain. So there's no like single person controlling that account. And so this XEM instruction will actually follow up with, okay, after you execute this, you're going to send an XEM to the destination chain with these 4 instructions that you see down here. All right, and these 4 instructions, as a summary, is going to basically, because it comes from this event, it's going to say, okay, I know that this person transferred tokens to this special account, so I can basically mint an XE dot, which is a representation of Polkadot, and give it to whatever destination that person decided to put, okay? Once again, very high level. I mean, it's not, I don't want to go into too much detail, but this is how, at a very high level, remote transfer works. The second one, which is I'm more excited to tell you about, is Slido. So basically, this is remote execution. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more later. But the idea is that you can trustlessly execute in a remote chain, for example, DOT or KSM. And for example, the way that Lido does it is that you can stake on Polka Dot and Kusama by initiating a transfer on Moonbeam. And this is really cool if you think about it, because this is native interoperability that allows you to stake DOT, but you can sign it with Metamask, for example, right? Which I think is pretty cool. And the user, if you have ever used Lido, the user has no idea what's happening on the background. They just sign a transaction with Metamask, and then they just get some tokens, and then they're actually staking DOT, which is pretty cool. And last but not least, this is still not available, but this is what we're aiming for, is remote Evm calls. So the idea is that projects are interested into using the Moonbeam Evm, and so the idea is that they can actually, from other blockchains, they can call Moonbeam and call it smart contracts there and say, hey, I want you to execute this for me, right? So the same way that you can use Phala's cloud computing, we want to enable the Evm calls into our chain through XEM, which would be also quite an achievement. And once again, this is trustlessly and remotely, right? This is completely given by the protocol because we're connected to Polka Dot and Kusama. So now let's talk about XEM, Polka Dot, and Moonbeam, more specific about Moonbeam. The first thing that we introduced was the Erc20s. So the Erc20s are basically a way that we made to have sort of like these interoperable assets like DOT. You can actually access them as an ERC20 on Moonbeam. What this means is that if you have DOT on Moonbeam, you can actually add it to MetaMask as an ERC20, or actually developers can use it in smart contracts natively. It's really, really simple to use XE.DOT as an ERC20 on Moonbeam. And that's why, for example, you can do liquid staking with Lido for Polka Dot. So this is a demo, that video of me adding, for example, Polka Dot to MetaMask using the Moonbeam dApp. So you can see here that I added it, and I have the XE.DOT in MetaMask, and I could just send it here to anyone in the ecosystem, or I could do some other stuff. The next thing is the X tokens. So this is another pre-compile, and these are pre-compiles, by the way. This is another pre-compile to actually allows you to send XE20 tokens, so XE.DOT, XEA USD, to any parachain in the ecosystem using the Ethereum Web3 RPC, right? So in theory, you could sign this transaction once again in MetaMask, and then that transaction will send DOT from Moonbeam to Polka Dot, or AUSD from Moonbeam to Phala, and so on. And this is the one that I'm the most excited about, which is the Lido example. So how this works at a very high level is that a happy user here with this MetaMask ledger or whatever will actually interact with the Lido contracts to say, hey, I want to stake 5 XE.DOTs, right? And so the Lido contracts will take those 5 XE.DOTs and a little bit more, or actually a little bit less for fees, and then we'll actually call a special contract, in this case in Moonriver, that will interact with Kusama and tell Kusama, hey, I want you to grab 5 XE.DOTs or 5 XE KSMs, convert them to KSM, and stake them in this validator, right? And that is all happening, once again, from a transaction that a user signed on Moonriver. The user don't really have to go to Polka.js apps, and it's staked through there. So this is a little bit of a summary of the XE20s that we have right now this is Moonriver. So you can see that we have roughly 75,000 XE KSMs. The one that is really cool to see is Remark, which we have 3.7 million XE Remarks on Moonriver. And then we have a bunch more that I did not have space to add here. On Moonbeam is a little bit less, because like I said, it's more recent. And so we surpassed 1 million DOTs, which is pretty cool to see. Actually, recently, I think it was July the 8th. And then you can see that we have also AKAs, XEA USD, and so on. So last, to wrap it up, because I have 3 minutes left, let's talk about connected contracts. So the idea of connected contracts is a new concept that we're bringing to the table of making Moonbeam sort of like an interoperable hub for the entire blockchain ecosystem. So I don't know if you guys have seen that, for example, Sushi, for example, has many blockchains in many deployments on many blockchains. And that is called fragmented deployments. They have their smart contracts on AVAX, they have their smart contracts on Moonbeam, Moonriver, Ethereum. And that fragments liquidity, and that fragments users as well, right? So it's very difficult to maintain all these deployments across all these different networks and so on. And so you can see here that the idea of connected contracts is that you have sort of like a main hub of your smart contract logic on Moonbeam. And what you have in other chains are smaller versions of logic that are strong enough to handle whatever interaction the user is doing in that blockchain, but is bringing the bigger sort of load of the action and execution on Moonbeam, right? So for example, if a user, there's a protocol called Prime Protocol, you can actually deposit sort of like AVAX on Avalanche, and you can mint their stable token on Ethereum, right? And everything will go through Moonbeam as a central hub of interoperability. So the main benefit that this solves is first fragmentation, like I mentioned before. You can have all your assets or all your deployments centralized in one specific chain, and you have only smaller pieces of code around the blockchain ecosystem in general. The second thing is efficiency, and this is where Polka Dot really comes into play, because I remember that I said that the sort of like Polka Dot offers specialized blockchains, right? So if, let's say, a project on AVAX wants to use Zeitgeist prediction markets, they can come through Moonbeam, call the prediction market on Zeitgeist, which is a blockchain specific for that, so it's going to be the most efficient one, and then send it back the result to AVAX. And last but not least, and this Lido example is really good for this, it improves the UX by hiding the infrastructure complexity. All right, so the Lido example is great because if you've ever staken in Polka.js apps, they recently launched a new UI. Before, it was not easy for the user. It was really, not easy. They had to do a lot of hoops, a lot of processes, and so on. And in Lido, it's a one-click thing that you click. You say, I want to stake 5 dots. You click submit. And everything that is happening behind, which is a lot of things, the user has no clue about it. And so the idea, once again, is that Moonbeam can be sort of this like interoperability hub that can connect parachains in the Polkadot ecosystem outside to other blockchain participants through general message passing protocols, like I said before. But also this other sort of like protocols can see into Polkadot or Kusama through Moonbeam, and that's why we have all these like smart contracts pre-compiled to allow for these Ethereum sort of interactions with everything. And so, and the idea once again is that the user will just sign a very simple transaction even from their smartphone. So that's it for me. That's all I have for you today. I think I'm not sure if I have enough time for some questions or not, because the timer ran out, so I guess not. I'll be in the booth outside if you have any questions. These are like our social channels, a website, documentation site, Telegram. And today's presentation, you can find it in this QR code, or you can also visit bit.ly ParisDOT.comm. So yeah, thank you for your attention.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Just a quick intro. And unfortunately, our next speaker isn't able to be here today, but he will be connecting online from Australia. Do we have the connection?
Hello.
Hi. Hi.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi. Lovely to hear you. How are you doing?
Good, good. Thanks. Very positive.
Yeah, we're positively happy to have you here, at least in this way online. Okay, so I will let you speak. Good luck. Thank you.
Very much. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. Hello, everybody. As you probably already heard from my positive reaction, yeah, I was supposed to be here today on the stage, but unfortunately my COVID test came back positive. So I'm stuck at home. So we're going to do it the right decentralized way, me presenting from Austria directly onto the stage in Paris, what we're doing in Australia. So 4 years ago, basically 2 significant things happened. One that was important to us, for example, was that if Austria was launched. The other thing was that at Web3 Summit, Gavin Wood introduced Substrate. And basically 4 years fast forward to today, we see where we are. We're at the conference talking about Polkadot, the ecosystem, the applications that have been built on top of it. And we've really come a really long way from back in 2018. However, what's still lacking is this mainstream adoption to really see enterprises, Web2 developers move over to Web3, start building on the Polkadot stack. And that's what we come into place. So my name is Matjaz Sobocan. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Authtrail. And I would like to show you what we've built in the past 4 years, how we came here, and what we're going to offer to the adoption of the Polkadot stack to the masses. But before I do so, I want to show you what we've done in the past 4 years, how we come to the introduction or connection to the Polkadot ecosystem. So we started back in 2018, as mentioned, as a response to an RFP. So a customer in Germany wanted to have more transparency from the enterprise data. So they had a supply chain and they just wanted to have more traceability of what they were doing. And we basically had two options. We either develop our own supply chain based blockchain, which back then already were 10 of them, or we could give the customer an easier onboarding experience, whereas we wouldn't develop a specific purpose-built blockchain, but rather use his existing infrastructure and create integration of APIs so they can leverage the existing infrastructure with the added benefit of having blockchain technology introduced into the environment. And as we've done that, we've seen quite good traction. So there were a lot of customers signing so-called letter of intents with us. We had a lot of POCs running and so on. And we slowly got a lot of traction in the European Union. So the data is basically being tracked or collected from those different enterprise integrations, and then we hashed it on Ethereum. So this was back in 2018, 2019. But we've seen kind of soon realized that to build a real customer-facing business on top of a, let's say, more or less unpredictable network like Ethereum was, we couldn't build a real business case on top of it because there were so many forks, upgrades, gas fees, fluctuating back and forth. I wasn't able, or we weren't able to hold our SLAs to our customers, specifically when it comes to response times and pricings. So we started looking for alternatives. What would be the best move to move over from Ethereum? And obviously, back then already, we saw Polkadot as being a very big player in the Web3 ecosystem, having this highly secured, governed infrastructure. So we got in touch with PureStake, the company behind Moonbeam, and we started cooperating, talking about the migration. And basically, we immediately fell in love with the team and how the Polkadot ecosystem is evolving. So our migration over from Ethereum to Moonbeam was a really seamless experience for us. As we wanted to really build a successful B2B solution on for data integrity. And this was basically our first initial offering that we had. We had data integrity as a service for our customers. But during the time that our customers started using it, they saw, look, we need something more. We need something more tangible. But data integrity as a service is a nice to have feature, but we need something that we can offer to our customers where we will gain benefit from it. We will reduce our costs and basically position our brand into a more strong reputation. So we went back to the drawing board, started to develop some use cases that would expand the offering that we are offering with Moonbeam. And one of those discovered use cases was anti-counterfeiting. So basically offering the customers some kind of a brand reputation. And to achieve that, we started to integrate other parachains on the market. So one of them were, for example, Kilt. Kilt was offering us the data and the digital identity that we needed for our customers to have a digital identity on Web3 and basically verify the authenticity of their products. Then they started asking, okay, how about can we link some important data to it, or documents like certificates, manuals? Sure. So we started cooperating with Trust Network. So basically, more and more parachains have been built into it. So it was then basically in this process, while we were doing that, we discovered that we're growing into a much bigger platform than just data integrity as a service. And we also soon realized that building something on top of the parachains is not that straightforward as we believed at the beginning. So there are a lot of different scripts, a lot of different documentation, a lot of different setups and so on. And we wanted to make something for ourselves that would make the integration easier. So while we were doing that, we kind of discovered that we're building something bigger, and this is how Australia 2.0 was basically born. But what we've came across, what the obstacles and hurdles were in the process, are that we need kind of a common support for popular languages, right? So we have different Substrate, Solidity, Rust, and all those languages in the backend. And while the many dApps that are being built on top of it, we kind of need this, how to say, logical interconnection between those parachains. So we need to define a unique set of rules and specific setup that would enable Web2 developers to build on top of Polka Dot, to create some user-centric, user-facing application in a much easier way. We need to build those logical interchain connections. So having XCMP and having those multi-chain contracts, as Moonbeam just mentioned, is a nice backend feature, but still having it at the front end for end users, we need something more tangible that the end user can basically work with. And we need to decrease the learning curve, give the developers a much easier access to documentation, and help them understand the technology below that in a much faster way. So as mentioned, this led basically to develop, or we saw that that Australia is emerging into a larger platform, and Australia 2.0 was basically born. To put a little bit in perspective, I want to showcase quickly where we position ourselves in comparison to the Web 1 and Web 2 analogy. So basically, Web 1 was a simple internet, read-only internet with a, let's say, more or less simple protocols below HTTP, SMTP, and so on. And we had the infrastructure, self-hosted infrastructure on the server-based level, which was more or less self-managed, and then simple read-only access services were built on top of it. Then we obviously had Web 2 that we're all familiar with the same protocols. The infrastructure shifted in a more centralized cloud environment like AWS Cloud Azure, where on top we then had different managed service providers like Stripe, Firebase, and MailerLite. And on top of that, we have those big FANG organizations that are basically using data for the monetization. Where we see now, obviously, the Web3 infrastructure is that we have Polka Dot as the smart, highly governed protocol below. We then have the purpose-built parachains as the infrastructure layer, each owning their own each of them kind of serving their own purpose. We have Moonbeam for data integrity, smart contracting, Kilt for digital identity, Akala for DeFi financing, Phala for cloud computing, Trust for storage, and so on, and more parachains will also be added at the backend. But the front end, new applications are emerging, like NFT, DeFi, enterprise applications. What we're still lacking is having those developers moving over from Web 2 to Web 3 and being familiar with the languages and be comfortable writing applications on top of it. And this is where we see Austria playing a big role in between. Now, this might sound like a very marketing-ish slide, but in reality, we did in-house testing on deploying Australia or using Australia or going straight to the parachains and building applications on top of it. So we gave our junior developers some tasks, some applications to be developed on pure parachains. And then the other group had the access to our platform where they would be using simple languages, developing the same application on top of it. And in essence, it was 10, even faster, but let's stay with 10 times for now when it came to the end product. So what we're actually offering, how does the platform look like? For once, we have straightforward, simple APIs where we have direct access to the simple parachains in the backend. So those are REST APIs at the front end. We have a single source of knowledge, which means we have unified API documentation with comprehensive code snippets. We have what I believe is essential for having a platform like this. It's basically a one doc for everything. No more searching for documentation for each parachain. It's a single source of knowledge. When you go into the platform, you have immediate access to the parachains at the backend. And on the front end, we then obviously have inclusive SDKs for various programming languages. So there are going to be SDKs for JavaScript, TypeScript, Java, C++, which is going to be more or less an open source community-driven layer where Web 2 developers, Web 3 developers can co-engage and build those SDKs on top. Obviously, to have an enterprise-focused platform, we also need some monitoring and analytics kind of enclose all the ecosystem. So the monitoring will be really a real-time overview of the backend performance, be it transactions at the backend, be it balances, be it downtimes, upgrades, whatever is happening on the protocol infrastructure layer, as we call it. We will be able to monitor it and then trigger the alerts accordingly to inform the developers on the front end about any hiccups that are occurring in the backend, but also clear insights into activity and transaction data via the analytics engine. So how come, or how does this all then come together? How does it look like in the Auvray? So basically we have Polka Dot at the backend as the layer 0. We have the different parachains building the infrastructure layer with different APIs up to the SDKs. And you can imagine right now we have, I believe, 13, 14 parachains that are really live on the Polka Dot network. And the main goal would be hundreds. But then if we go over the hundreds as well with the different relay chains being connected, we can go into the thousands. You can then see the complexity that will grow out of it, and having the option to build simple API or simple applications on top of it is not going to be that much straightforward anymore. So we are trying to really consolidate all those parachains into one simple application platform, managed service platform, and then opening up the SDKs on the front end to give Web2 developers the possibility to build Web3 applications. So in essence, to kind of summarize all of this together, we're trying to build or help builders build Web3 easily and quickly in an effective, intuitive, and flexible way. We've struggled with it. We've seen how not so straightforward it is to really build end-user applications on top of it. That's why we wanted to open up and share our knowledge and share our discoveries with the world. And yeah, we'd like to welcome everyone on board, and let's build Web3 together. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming online, and soon we will welcome our next speaker. But thank you again for connecting at least online, Matjaz.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for making this possible.
I'm glad it worked out. Everyone, please welcome our next speaker, Elie from Logion.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, here we go. So hi, I'm Elie, Logion's co-founder, and today I'm thrilled to announce a new capability of Logion for safe digital ownership. And this is the capability of be able to deliver NFT underlying assets to the sole NFT owner. But first thing first, what is Logion? So Logion is an international association. We aim to become a parachain by the end of the year. And Logion is supported by the Polka Dot program of Outlier Ventures, and we got a grant from the Web3 Foundation with regard to the protection we want to offer to the Web3 ecosystem over the long term. What is the login protection? So first, as you know, digital ownership is completely unsafe. For instance, chain analysis estimate that more than $140 billion of Bitcoin, and we are just talking about Bitcoin alone, are locked in lost wallets. You also have, sometimes NFT underlying assets that could disappear overnight. And that's exactly what happened to the Cool Cats collection. And then you have an NFT, that is a certificate of property, that is linked to no property at all. You have also OpenSea that publicly admit that more than 80% of NFT created with their platform are plagiarized works, spam, or fake collections. Last but not least, stablecoin. You have a lot of doubt those days with regard to the existence of stablecoin underlying assets. So at Logion, our take is that you will never have mass adoption without safe digital ownership. So what is Logion? Logion is a public blockchain operated by a decentralized network of international legal officers that provide legal protection, legal grade protection to digital assets and related transactions. Logion is the only blockchain where all digital asset data and underlying files are genuinely transformed into certified, verified evidence, and tokens are safeguarded by a decentralized network of legal officers. So basically, we are providing two kinds of protection. First, before a transaction, we provide the digital asset generation protection for marketplaces or any kind of token-based project. So we give the ability to verify and to check the existence of a token underlying asset, whether it's digital, physical, or even monetary. We also created an innovation, a specific blockchain object, and we name it the legal officer case, or lock. The lock is a blockchain object where you will store everything that materializes a transactions, and everything it's completed with an IPFS network that is private and encrypted, where you will have all the related files, of course, under restrictive access rules. And then we announced today that we had to that comprehensive protection an additional capability, the ability to actually deliver NFT underlying assets to the sole asset holder. Then, after a transaction, we offer to digital wallet providers two types of protection: social recovery service and multi-signature service, again provided by a decentralized network of independent legal officers. So social recovery, specifically when you have the password or seed phrase loss situation, you will have the help of a legal officer that will help you through that process for recovering your assets after, of course, due diligence. And when it comes to multi-signature, it's the ability from a vault to transfer assets with your signature and the co-signature of a legal officer that you selected before, and that will allow the execution of the transfer. That comprehensive protection before and after a transaction again comes from a decentralized network of legal officers. And in the project, Logion is supported by the president, Mark Schmidt, and the secretary, Patrick Guillin, of the International Union of judicial officers. The International Union of Judicial Officers is by far the largest legal professional association in the world. 5 continents, more than 100 countries. So that's why we say that all the projects built with the logion infrastructure are actually protecting their digital asset holders. So, NFT. Let's focus on the NFT situation. So when of course you want to acquire something digital, digital ownership is particularly complex. And of course, at the time of the sale, that complexity is hidden. But you face that complexity no later than when you try to sell what you own. First, if the image of any kind of underlying digital asset is actually stored on a centralized storage of a company that goes down, or if you lose access, then there is no guarantee that you could get your property back. Same thing goes with the documentation that protect your rights. The terms and conditions, the type of rights that you own with the NFT, you need to protect that. And if you lose that, you jeopardize your rights. So you will have an NFT, and it means the string of letters and numbers that basically say that you own something, that you own the NFT. But then all the underlying assets could be gone. So if the NFT is permanent, the underlying assets and related documentation are not. Additionally, as all underlying assets are usually stored on public storage system, it means that everybody can actually download the asset that you actually acquired by buying the NFT itself and can use it. So in a digital world, when you make a copy of a digital file, there is no difference between the file and its copy. Thus, you need really, when you face that digital ownership situation, you need to retrace everything yourself. And that situation jeopardizes the core value of the NFT you own. So how we solve that situation with Logion? So step 1, we work with marketplaces, for instance, in the NFT use case, and we create a complete legal framework with the project. So we create a legal officer case where the proof of existence of the company that is behind the project, where the proof of existence of the author of the collection, where we store also the type of contracts, the type of rights that are transferred with the NFT. I mean, everything that materializes what you can do, what you can't do with the collection. And that creates a legal framework. Then, as soon as the legal officer validates that legal framework, we create a technical bridge, a secure funnel that allows data transmission between the marketplace infrastructure and the login infrastructure. That's the step 2. Step 3, each NFT creation leads to data and file submission by the marketplace to the login infrastructure under the collection legal officer case scope. And by files and data, I mean NFT ID, NFT description, type of transferred rights, of course, the digital underlying asset file or any kind of file that are related to that NFT. Then, step 4, each NFT creation leads to the availability of a public online login certificate with the collection legal officer case and NFT data that are publicly available. It's a zero-knowledge infrastructure because, of course, you will never access, we are not revealing the content of the files. Every file that we protect, we generate, for every file, we generate a hash, and that's how we prove the existence, as verified by the legal officer, of all the documentation and all the things that materialize, again, the transaction. You have an address that ends with the ID of the NFT, and again, it's a direct reading of the blockchain infrastructure. A print of that certificate is not valid. Okay, that's the idea. So, the login infrastructure is in a production mode since November last year. Of course, it's for the blockchain part, we are in a standalone mode. We aim to become a parachain by the end of the year, but still, we are running that infrastructure in a complete production mode. And in December, we started our first project with the King Baudouin Foundation, a museum, the Casterman, the publisher, and a digital marketplace named Arts. And the idea for when you buy an NFT from Didier Comès, so that artist is a black and white master, and the idea is that with the when you pay for NFT, that sale will actually help to finance the restoration of those masterpieces. And in exchange of that NFT, the NFT is linked to a physical object, a reproduction, high quality print, completely limited, very limited edition that the NFT owner will receive after the restoration. And you also have the ability to have a private usage of the digital file of the masterpiece that you selected. That NFT has been minted on the SRM blockchain, and when you actually buy that NFT, you see on the marketplace that on the NFT metadata, you have a login ID. And that login ID is linked to a login certificate, where again, you will have a list of everything that materialized and secure all the party to that transaction. You know that a legal officer actually checked the existence of every company behind that project. You have the proof, the hash of all that documentation. You know that there is a contract that allows Arts to actually execute that initiative. You also know that there is a legal officer that went on site at the museum and wrote an official statement of facts that proved the existence of those masterpieces. So everything there is materialized on the login certificate, public certificate. And as NFTs has been sold on OpenSea, for the first time in the OpenSea history, you are actually a legal officer, Elie Auvray, that certified the existence of everything that protects the party to that project, especially the rights and the underlying assets related to that NFT. So we decided to add, and that's something we announced today, we decided to add an additional protection, and that could be the step 5. It's the ability to deliver to the sole NFT owner the NFT underlying assets. So from the NFT marketplace or from the certificate, you will have a claim your digital asset button. And when you click on that, you will sign and log in with cross-check information and data from the marketplace and from login to allow the generation of a copy of the file that will be only delivered to the NFT owner. So those are mock-ups of the feature. So this is, from the online certificate. You have a claim your asset button, and we decided to go with Metamask from the SRM ecosystem, because as a matter of fact, the vast majority of NFTs are today minted on the SRM ecosystem. But that being said, we are currently discussing with the Polka Dot community, especially with unique networks, also Asta, friends from Astar, and also a marketplace named Artpool. So the first development that started this feature, we decided to go with the Metamask integration. So the idea is you sign with your Metamask, then you have a logion engine that actually cross-check the asset hash that is stored on the logion blockchain. We also have the NFT identifiers, and we also have the Metamask signature ID. And we cross-check that information with the data that are stored on the Ethereum blockchain, especially the NFT identifier and the NFT owner. And we are using the Etherscan APIs to execute that verification. Then we generate a specific version of the file from what we have on our IPFS private and encrypted network. And we sign the generation of the file and include the public key of the NFT owner. Then we deliver the file to the NFT owner. And we record the hash of that file, because then it would be very easy to detect if a file has been modified, because if there is no metadata or if the metadata has been changed, then you can, of course, detect it by just checking the different hash of the file. So it's, again, an additional layer of security here. So I hate PowerPoints, I have to say, and I really like to do a demo of that. So actually, we are at, let's say, 60% of completion of that feature. We aim to deliver and finalize this by the end of the summer. And this is where we are, actually. So this is a logion certificate. You see that you have the contracts, the right definitions, the legal officer report, you have timestamp of all those documents, you have the hash of those files. That's the legal officer case that cover every NFT creation on the platform, on the marketplace. And for each NFT creation, you have a collection item that is actually created with timestamps, with identifier, which are the NFT ideas. And then you see that from the marketplace sends those information plus the underlying files. So let's claim that file. And to do so, I will have to sign. So as you see here, this is my MetaMask. And as MetaMask is linked to now Ledger, I can sign using my Ledger hard wallet, which gives an additional layer of security. So let's do that. Okay. Okay, application is ready. Let's sign again. There you go. So now on my Ledger, request a signature. I see the message, believe me. And now it's a sign message. And on the Ledger, you have to just double click on two buttons. It's done. As you see now, I'm authenticated, and logion allows to actually download the related file. There you go. Here you go. So this is where we are. So it's very cool implementation of MetaMask and Ledger by extension. Again, we allow the download of a digital asset, or an underlying asset of an NFT file. With that protection, the complete workflow will be implemented by the end of the summer. So results. So with the legal officer case, you have one universal and permanent ID that is bound to the NFT. And then we have also a public certificate with zero knowledge proof infrastructure. We can say that there is a lot of documents that materialize and protect all the parties to a transaction without revealing the content, but providing the tools to the people that own those files to check if the version of the file that they got are genuine or not, are authentic or not. Then all data are secured on the immutable logion blockchain. All related files are secured on the private and encrypted IPFS network that we deploy among all the different logion blockchain nodes. And now we will add the ability to deliver all underlying assets of an NFT, again, to the sole NFT owners. So we are protecting marketplaces, creators, owners, sellers, buyers through the entire NFT journey. As a consequence, the NFT and the underlying assets and documentation are now permanent, thanks to and bound with a blockchain-based certificate validated by an official legal officer you can eventually, if something goes wrong, speak with. Your digital ownership is truly protected, and that's why we say that all projects built with the login infrastructure are protecting their digital asset holders. Others aren't. And that's why login is the blockchain infrastructure of safe digital ownership, so that people can protect the value they create and exchange on the Polka Dot ecosystem and beyond. Thank you. Maybe you have questions?
You can meet him upstairs afterwards. Everyone, please welcome our last speaker of the day, and Dr. Torsten from Pendulum.
Hey everyone. Ooh, that was a long session now, but thanks for staying so long. I would like to start with a story. So just recently I went to Prague to another Polka Dot conference and want to exchange some currency. I want to exchange euros for Czech crowns. And whatever I tried, ATM or exchange office, I just got such a bad deal. And I guess you know this. You also had that experience. And then I wondered, why is it that in traditional finance, Forex or foreign exchange is still so expensive, the fees are so bad, why it's still so inefficient, and why it's still so intransparent? Like, you don't know why you pay those fees, who are the actors in the background that want to take their share. And I think everyone here agrees that the solution would be blockchain. Solution would be stablecoins, or solution would be Forex on blockchain. And that's what our project, Pendulum, is going to address. Hello everyone, I'm Torsten, I'm the CTO of Pendulum. And I would like to start to give an overview of what our project is about. So Pendulum is a parachain project which intends to be live on Polkadot later this year. We're not live yet, but we just recently secured a slot on Kusama. We're also not live yet on Kusama because we secured a slot in the current lease period, but we intend to launch in August. And our parachain on Kusama is called Amplitude. Our mission is to connect fiat networks to the DeFi ecosystem. What that means is that our goal is to become the central hub for fiat coins and stable tokens. But let me be more specific. Our blockchain is tailored for Forex. Or that means that we intend to create the ideal Forex ecosystem for dApp developers. Another aspect of Pendulum is also that we are tailored for business. So if you are a business with business needs, for example, compliance, and you want to build an application on blockchain, then you should build it on our blockchain. One example for a business need or a business application would be cross-border transfers from business to business, B2B. Another aspect of Pendulum that I want to point out is that we built local banking integrations for stablecoins. And what that looks like is what I show you on this slide here. This is an example of a cross-border payment, which starts in Europe and ends in Tanzania. So I want to transfer euros from Europe to a recipient in Tanzania, and of course I want to ensure that the recipient receives Tanzanian shilling. Now Pendulum is in the middle of this transaction, and you see that Pendulum has local fintech or banking integrations in both regions. What that means is that there's a local bank that is able to tokenize euros, and there's a local bank or fintech in Tanzania that is able to de-tokenize Tanzanian shilling. And the missing component is happening then on Pendulum, where you still need to exchange these two tokens, euro tokens to Tanzanian shilling tokens. And that happens through the power of this Forex AMM, which is an automated market maker optimized for Forex. Optimized for Forex in this case means that, for example, you have single-sided liquidity pools, or you have price curves that are optimized for Forex, or, for example, you have a backstop pool based on AUSD from Phala. Now, it becomes clear that local banking integrations are important for us, but I said that Pendulum intends to be the central hub for stablecoins and fiat tokens, and for that reason, we also want to build bridges, and we already built bridges, to all blockchain ecosystems that have a great support of stablecoins. For example, Celo or Stellar, Solana. And by building all these bridges, we actually studied a lot of those technologies and possible bridges. That's what we did for many months. And it turned out that all those blockchains have different needs, they have different technologies, and for that reason, the bridges that you need to build to them work very differently. We abstracted from that and built Spacewalk, which is a unified concept for building bridges for stablecoins for Polkadot. And through Spacewalk, we bring in stablecoins from all these nice ecosystems into Polkadot, not just to Pendulum, but we make them available for all of Polkadot and to other parachain projects through the power of bridges inside Polkadot. Now, as a summary, what is important for Pendulum is that first we have local banking integrations, then we have our Spacewalk bridge, and we have Forex AMMs. I just focus on these topics here. Actually, Pendulum is about more topics, namely every DeFi application for stablecoins is a valid use case for Pendulum, but I want to focus in this presentation. And particularly, I want to focus on the Spacewalk bridge and Forex AMMs. This is basically an agenda for this presentation. I will first talk about the Spacewalk bridge, and then we'll go into more detail about Forex AMMs on Pendulum. Let me start with Spacewalk. I already said that Spacewalk is a unified bridge concept for .sama. Or to put it more technical, it's a unified bridge concept for substrate chains. And it's not just a concept, but it's actually a concrete implementation. This is an implementation that has been granted with a Web3 grant, and although we are going to use it in Pendulum, it is totally independent of Pendulum. It is in its own repository, and everyone who builds a substrate chain or a parachain can just integrate Spacewalk in their own chain, and by that have the power of using those bridges to other networks. If you want to integrate Spacewalk in your chain, you just implement a pallet, and you also need to deploy some services that are required depending on what network you want to connect with. For example, you need to deploy Oracle services or custodian services. Now let me talk about the features of Spacewalk. What was really important for us is that we provide a totally decentralized concept. We studied a lot of bridges in the last couple of months or years, and it turns out that unfortunately a lot of bridges are totally centralized or claim to be decentralized, but they don't meet our standard for decentralization. And probably everyone observed that in this year alone there were a lot of attacks on bridges. Just in March there was an attack on a bridge where some single attacker was able to steal $600 million US. And that was just because the bridge was not really decentralized, although they gave the impression that they were. So decentralization matters. Additionally, Spacewalk is trust minimized. That means that if you have to interact with a human actor, the human actor is incentivized, economically incentivized not to misbehave. And if they happen to misbehave, you're guaranteed to get your money back anyway. Thirdly, Spacewalk is censorship resistant. That means that if you have to interact with a human actor again, for example, a custodian, they would be able to deny service to you, but you can always go to another human actor in that decentralized network, or you can just deploy your own service, and by that, Spacewalk will always guarantee service to you. Now, I already said that Spacewalk is a unified concept. That means that it has a unified API if you plug it into your substrate chain independently of what bridge you actually use at the end. So we have different components that plug into the Spacewalk palette that provides that unified API, for example, for Celo or Stellar. Now, I would like to actually, after this very general view, I would like to actually look at one example of Spacewalk, namely the Stellar implementation for Spacewalk. And the reason for that is that Stellar is particularly important for our use case. I already said that we have big interest in bringing in stablecoins. And Stellar managed to have a great support for fiat-backed stablecoins, 100% collateralized, compliant, and not that algorithmic stablecoin that made really bad news in the recent couple of weeks and months. So these are great stablecoins to have. And Stellar actually has more than 15 stablecoins that they arranged with local banking integration in many different countries. For example, Brazilian reais, Mexican pesos, Tanzanian shilling, Nigerian naira, and so on. So that's very important for us. I want to skip this slide because it's a little bit too technical and don't have enough time. So let me just quickly give you an overview about how Spacewalk for Stellar actually looks like. This is a little bit overwhelming, but bear with me. I go through it component by component. First, I want to point out that Spacewalk Stellar is based on InterBTC, and InterBTC is a bridge between Bitcoin and Polka Dot, or to be more precise, to the interlay parachain or Kintsugi parachain on Kusama. And the team between Interlay, they figured out how to build a bridge to a non-smart contract capable blockchain like Bitcoin in a totally decentralized manner and trust minimized manner. It's peer reviewed and it's really great. And for that reason, we also use that concept because Stellar is also one of those blockchains that don't allow for smart contracts, which makes it just a little bit harder to build the bridge. But our Stellar blockchain, Spacewalk, is very different to Interlay in a very crucial point, namely that we have the Stellar Oracle as a central element. But let me first point out the other elements of the blockchain, of this bridge. So first we have two blockchains, which are the orange boxes. On the one hand side, we have Stellar. On the other side, we have the substrate chain. And now I want to bridge tokens from one account on Stellar to another account on substrate chain. This account is identified with this blue circle. And of course, token transfers with bridges are not actual transfers, but they're just simulated transfers, because you cannot really transfer a token from one chain to another one. And the simulation happens by first locking tokens in special accounts on the Stellar side. Those accounts are called vaults. There can be an unlimited number of those vaults. It's totally decentralized. And as long as those coins are locked in these vaults, they're rendered unusable in Stellar. And as long as they are locked, you can have a copy of this coin on substrate, a so-called wrap token. Now, I already said that Stellar does not have smart contracts, and that means that these vaults cannot be controlled by smart contracts, which would be totally reliable, but they need to be controlled by human actors, who can be unreliable and can just run away with the money. For that reason, this concept uses collateralization. That means that the human actors need to first lock collateral on the substrate chain, and the Spacewalk smart contract or Spacewalk pallet is this contract there. So this manages actually this collateral. And it will also use an external price feed oracle because the asset that you use in the collateral and the asset that you use in the vault is usually different, and the prices can differ, so that at one point in time it could happen that the collateral is not enough anymore to really cover the locked tokens, and then you need to actually liquidate the vault and give back the money to the user. That's why you need this external oracle for the price feed. Now we have another oracle, and this is the Stellar oracle, and that's the big component here. Namely, that's the main component that tells the Spacewalk pallet on the substrate chain what goes on in Stellar. And this is very important. Namely, whenever someone wants to send money from Stellar to the substrate chain and lock them in vaults, then the Spacewalk pallet needs to know about this. It needs to reliably know that someone locked tokens in the vault, and only then it will mint a copy, a wrapped copy of that token and send it to the target account. And Stellar Oracle usually sounds like something that's quite centralized and not 100% secure, but the Stellar Oracle is provably secure, provably decentralized, and is at least as secure as the Stellar consensus protocol itself, because it very much uses the consensus algorithm of Stellar. It's very, very much tailored for that one. It's very special, very unique, and it takes features of that consensus protocol. Now, I don't want to go into any more details of this Spacewalk concept, because I also want to talk about the Forex AMMs. Maybe just as a conclusion, where we are in the development of this Spacewalk bridge, I already said that Spacewalk is supported by a Web3 grant, which consists of 3 milestones, and we're currently working on the 2nd and 3rd milestone. Now about the Forex AMMs. Before I talk about Forex AMMs, let's first look at a general blockchain like Ethereum, a general purpose blockchain. In a general purpose blockchain, we have 2 different main layers. First, we have the runtime layer, which expresses the general logic of the blockchain itself, which is hard-coded, which is hard to change, which usually stays the same. And then you have application developers who use smart contracts to develop their applications. Usually, automated market makers are developed as smart contracts on the application layer. Now, this is true in Ethereum, but Substrate and parachains on Polka Dot actually use a different approach. Namely, they are special purpose parachains. So all those parachains have a special purpose, and what happens on a special purpose parachain is that you move this application layer down so that the application somehow lives inside the smart contracts and inside the runtime. And the component that you have in the runtime is called a pallet. It's hard-coded in the runtime, and what you do is that you try to identify common components of all your applications that reside in your smart contract, in your parachain, and you put them into the pallet. That's great because the pallet is much more efficient. It's 1,000 times more efficiently than a smart contract, and the power of Substrate is also that it's very easy to update those pallets. You can always have forkless updates. You can just add new features to pallets. It's by far not as restricted as the runtime on Ethereum, for example. Now, the smart contract developers, the application developers, they would then build an application directly on top of that pallet using the API of the pallet and build the components that are common to their own that are specific to their own application. Now, in our example, that will look like this. I already said that we will build, or we will incentivize a community to build a whole ecosystem of Forex AMMs or other AMMs. And those Forex AMMs would then be built as smart contracts, and you have a Pendulum-specific pallet which integrates common components that all AMMs have in common. Now, in order to explain what AMMs have in common, I just want to give a very, very easy introduction to AMMs in case you're not familiar with them. So this is a very simple automated market maker, a so-called constant function market maker. And a constant function market maker, in this case, would be a market maker for exchanging US dollars to euro tokens. Such a market maker would always have 2 liquidity pools, which are expressed as these 2 jars now. These 2 liquidity pools, one for the one currency, the other one for the other currency, would hold some tokens. And since you only have 2 two jars or two liquidity pools, then every state of this automated market maker can be represented as a dot in a two-dimensional matrix in this diagram that you see here, where the x-axis represents the amount of euro tokens in that moment, and the y-axis represents the amount of US dollar tokens in that moment. So if you have 3 euro tokens and 3 US dollar tokens, then this current state would be represented by this red dot that you see there. Something that's important for constant function market makers is that they would introduce a price curve. There's this blue curve that you see there. And the contract of the market maker is that whatever happens, however it interacts with the user, the automated market maker will always ensure that the current state, this red dot that you see, always stays on that blue line. Now, what does it mean? Let's say that someone wants to interact with the automated market maker and wants to give some US dollar tokens in return for some euro tokens from the automated market maker. Let's say I want to exchange and I want to receive 2 US dollar tokens, 2 euro tokens. I want to take 2 euro tokens out of that jar. Now the automated market maker can determine how much US dollar tokens I need to give to it, but just going to the left, 2 euro tokens, and then seeing how much it needs to go up to land again on that price curve. In this case, I need to give 3 US dollar tokens, a little more than the number of euro tokens. As you can see, it's a little bit steeper. Now, if you go back to the original state, I could also make the reverse transfer. I want to have some US dollar tokens in exchange for euro tokens, and you see that it works pretty much the same way. I just know that I go to the left and go down again, so that the concept that the market maker stays on the price curve. And in that state, for example, someone else comes and wants to make another transfer, another exchange, and wants to have even more US dollars. Now you see that because the curve gets flatter and flatter, that you need to give more and more euros tokens for the same amount of US dollar tokens. In this case, for example, you need to give another 2 euro tokens just for half a US dollar in return, because the curve is flatter. Yeah, so it's quite clear that way that the slope of the curve actually represents the current exchange rate. And those market makers are actually quite interesting, because arbitrageurs will always make sure that the dot will be pushed around to a point where the current slope of the current exchange rate represents the external actual exchange rate of this asset pair. And that's very nice, because for me as a user who wants to interact with this market maker, I will always find the actual exchange rate that I find on the real market, thanks to the arbitrageurs. It's nice for me, but not good for the liquidity providers, because the liquidity providers, they carry a high risk to these arbitrageurs. There's something like impermanent loss, don't want to go into details, but at least there is a lot of risk for the people that provided the original liquidity whenever they want to get back their liquidity at one point. And for that reason, there are also other inventions. For example, these proactive market makers, they protect from arbitrageurs by taking external price feed oracle into account, and always make sure that always adapt the curve, that the curve is not constant, but it always changes, and the slope of the curve really reflects the external price of these asset pairs. So that at least solves the arbitrageur problem and makes it much better for the liquidity providers that they don't have that risk. So there are a lot of different approaches for market makers. There is a lot of research happening, and I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of ingenious new ideas happening in the future. And of course, we want that all those ideas are explored on Pendulum, and that there is a rich ecosystem of those developers and those projects. Now, let's go back to the original view. And now with this knowledge, we can identify what typical components are that we need to implement as pallets and are implementing as pallets. For example, we might have a pallet directly for constant function market makers. We definitely have a pallet for oracles, because price feed oracles would be important for a lot of projects. It might also make sense to identify the quality of a token and give this kind of API to Forex developers. And a palette for proactive market makers is also important, as I just showed that proactive market makers are quite advanced and give a lot of nice benefits. If we now look on the side of the developers that provide the smart contracts and develop the Forex AMNs on top of that, given that we have those palettes, what do they actually do? How do they differ? Well, they need to implement the logic that's different between every market maker. For example, they can implement different price curves. They might also implement different liquidity pools. I just showed a market maker that has 2 liquidity pools. But there are market makers for a lot of liquidity pools. For example, you can have one market maker that would allow to exchange all kind of fiat tokens. Let's say there are 50 different fiat asset pairs, and a single market maker would allow to exchange all of them against each other, so that you don't need to deploy a market maker per asset pair. Much more efficient. Price feed handling would be different. I already said that there are market makers that use price feeds and incorporate them into their own logic. Finally, you want to averse risk and have different economic models for that. For example, a backstop pool. It's very important for liquidity providers. And finally, you also want to give incentives to the liquidity providers. Liquidity providers, they carry a lot of risk. They need to lock tokens that they can't access. Of course, they need rewards. You want to reward them, you want to have incentives for them. Now, let me talk about the current situation. We initially start with 2 different AMMs. One is an experimental AMM, which is based on Uniswap v2. Not too special, already quite established as a really good market maker. But we have 2 different implementations, one as a smart contract in ink, and one as a pallet. And that allows us to really explore the boundaries between what part of the logic should be inside a pallet, what part of the logic should be inside a smart contract. And that allows us to really explore what the ideal palette for AMM providers would be, what kind of features you want to have in the palette. On the other hand, we have a very advanced market maker, a next generation market maker, which is called Project Amber. It's the first community project on top of Pendulum. And as I said, it's very advanced. There is a new white paper that just got released. It's very interesting to read, has a very big set of very new ideas, and is very powerful. With that, I want to conclude my talk. Thanks a lot. I want to invite you to actually get involved in our project. Go to our link tree here, follow us on Twitter, or get involved in building either directly in our Spacewalk repository or on Pendulum, or consider to actually build a community project on top of Pendulum. For example, market makers or any other interesting applications for stablecoins. We are open for all ideas. Finally, if you want to connect to me, you see some links here. Thank you a lot. And if you have any questions, then please go ahead.
We have maybe 1 minute to take 1 or 2 questions.
1 minute only.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh. No question? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you to have joined us. Thank you, everyone. It's the end of this first day. You know, tomorrow will be a complete day with a workshop also. Some speech here on the main stage, but also a workshop.
It's going to be the full day,
yeah.
And the workshop's on the 9th floor, so we hope to see you there as well. And please don't forget, today ParisDOT organized a beautiful side events in La Mazette. It's going to be lovely on the Seine and have some food and drinks over there so we can network more.
And something really important. Thanks to all your sponsors and partners. See you tomorrow. Have a nice evening.